Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. The case that I'm going to be looking into today is the unsolved disappearance of Kristine Kupka. This was a suggested case by Justice, so thank you for that. I appreciate all the suggestions that you guys have, of course. I'd just like to let you know, I mean no disrespect to anyone I'm going to talk about. I've just gathered this information from the internet and compiled it into a video for educational purposes. So Kristine Kupka was born on 3rd of May in 1970. She was actually born in Mount Carroll in Illinois. She had quite a big family. She was actually the youngest of 6 children, and she was very, very close to one of her older sisters called Kathy. Her mother was actually a factory worker and her father was a firefighter, and I do believe that her parents did actually split up whilst she was still very young. Also, while she was still very young, unfortunately, her father did pass away, and her mother then moved the children and herself to Madison, Wisconsin. This was a much larger place to live in, and they decided that they needed the change. Kristine went on to attend Malcolm Shabazz High School in Madison, and that was in the late 80s. Now, it was a very alternate school. It was not traditional, sort of in the normal American school sense, public school sense. It had this non-traditional atmosphere where people would refer to the teachers sort of by first names, and it would really promote individuality. It was seemed like quite a cool environment to sort of be educated in and brought up in. Nothing like a normal sort of public school, as I said. So Kristine graduated, and then she went on to attend the University of Wisconsin. She soon quickly realised that actually the Midwest was not really a good fit for her. She didn't like sort of living in that area, and so she decided to drop out of university and she moved to Atlanta, Georgia. She really was this free spirit. She was really adventurous and a very, very independent woman actually, and she was just trying to find the right fit for her. She was just trying to find home, where she wanted to live and where she wanted to do a career, bring up a family, and just live out the rest of her life. That's what she was really searching for. She became a waitress in Atlanta, and she quickly once more realised that again this was not the right fit for her. Now her sister Kathy, as I said, they were very close. She lived in New York, and after a visit with her, she decided that actually she thought New York was the place for her, and so she dropped everything once more. She collected all her stuff and off to New York she went. She moved there, eventually settling into the Kensington section in Brooklyn. Now this is where she really thrived. She had finally found a home. Like I said, she'd moved so many times. She was looking for New York City, and when she found it, she knew that's where she wanted to be, and so she stayed there. She went on to rent out a few floors of like this shared house, and she would have roommates and they would all share the rent, and obviously it was a cheaper way of living. Once more, she got a job. She became a waitress at a Caribbean restaurant called Negro. As I said, she was a free spirit. She really started to concentrate on the things that she was really passionate about. She was passionate about vegetarianism and human rights causes, and she really worked on those. She really was a very passionate person and very opinionated, and they really fit well together with what she wanted to do with her life. When she hit her early 20s, she enrolled in Baruch College. She was a highly intelligent woman. She majored in philosophy, and her ultimate goal was to go to law school and deal with women's issues. And that was her passion. That was really what she wanted to. She was very career driven. As I said, she set goals and she just sort of plunged towards them until she achieved them, like finding the home that she wanted to settle in. She just moved so many times until she found it. She was the same with her career. That is what she wanted to do, and that is what she was going to do. The semester of 1998 was her second to last semester in college, and she was finishing up certain courses. She was going to graduate at the end of that year, and she still had a few courses that she had to get through, obviously, before she could do that. One of which was a chemistry class. This was where she actually developed a crush on her lab instructor. His name was Darshan Prasad, but he was often known as Rudy, and that is how I'm going to refer to him in the rest of this video because that is how everyone knew him. He was a quality control chemist as well as a lab instructor, and he was actually going to a dental school in New Jersey. He was training to have this new career in dentistry. Now, Kristine was really outgoing with men, so if she liked him, she wasn't really one to think of like the traditional way some women think is that the men should approach the women. And she never really thought that. If she liked someone, she would let them know about it. She would go and approach them. She would go and talk to them. She just was brimming with confidence, and she wasn't sort of one to wait and sort of let them come to her. She would talk to her friends. She would tell them that obviously she liked Rudy and she wanted to try and find out if he was single. And not long after that, she did find out that actually he said he was single. He said that he'd had a breakup with his partner recently and that he was now single. And they did exchange phone numbers and bleep numbers. Now, they begin dating and seeing each other, and Rudy actually mentions this trip to Turkey that he's going to be taking for business sort of in the near future. And Kristine really, really wanted to go with him. She was kind of head over heels for him, and she was so infatuated with him. She wanted to go sort of everywhere that he went. Now, even though he was a professor, they were really close in age. He had recently graduated Baruch College himself, so it wasn't really like this huge age gap, what's really, really frowned upon or something like that. They were very, very close in age. And there was a clear mutual attraction between them both. She liked him, he liked her. Even though he was her professor, they only actually began dating after he was no longer her professor. So they did wait because they didn't want to be seen, I guess, as sort of the student dating the professor. They were said to be quite an odd match. Kristine was this liberal, independent woman who knew exactly what she wanted and how she wanted it, and that was that. She was, I guess you could call her stubborn in a sense. I don't know. If she wanted something, she wanted something, and there was pretty much no change in her mind. Whereas Rudy was more kind of a clean-cut, preppy professor kind of guy. Kristine also would always wear black, so she would often be seen out wearing completely black clothing. She thought he was this handsome, naive guy who was really sweet, and that was her opinion of him. But there are also some sources out there that say that yes, okay, he was intelligent and he was polite, but he was also angry and moody. He had like another side to him that other people saw. Whether Kristine ever saw that at the time, I don't know. Her roommate said that he was adorable, but they felt like he was hiding something, which is a bit of a strange thing to say. He definitely was hiding something, I'm not gonna lie. Not long after they had begun their relationship, we're now in July, Kristine finds out that she's actually pregnant. It wasn't planned by any means, it shocked her. And as I said, she was very goal orientated, so she had her plans and that was that. But this threw a spanner in the works, and after she did get over the initial shock of it all, she realised that actually she was 28 years old. She was on this really, really good career path. That was something that she really wanted to do. So she could handle being a mother. It was something that she decided that actually she wanted to do. She wanted kids, and so, okay, it wasn't planned, but she wanted this baby. The thing is that she was only intimate with Rudy once, I believe. And she'd not been intimate with anyone else, so he was definitely the dad. Definitely, for certain. But she was intimate with him once and caught, which is quite lucky or unlucky, I guess. However you want, whichever side you want to look at it. So she went and told her friends that she was nervous of telling him, which is understandable. Obviously, you're excited that you bring a new life into the world, but she doesn't know how he's going to feel about it. And so, yeah, of course, she's going to be nervous about that. I don't think she was truly prepared for his full reaction. He was not happy at all. He did not want this child. He was so angry about it, and he denied it was his at all. He said something along the lines that he'd had a partial vasectomy, which I don't really know whether that's a thing or not. But she went on to tell him that it was definitely his. I know they'd only been intimate once, but she'd not been intimate with anybody else. It was impossible for it to be anybody else's child than his. That was when he reversed everything he'd said. He quickly took it all back, and he began getting really upset, crying, and that was when he began begging her to have an abortion. His bad reaction to this entire situation, the reasoning behind it was eventually discovered. He was actually a newly married man. And that future business trip that I mentioned previously, that Kristine really wanted to go with him on, was actually his honeymoon. So he was putting in the plans early, sort of slipping it right in there, so that when he did go on this trip, she would think it was for business when actually it was his honeymoon, which is just ridiculous. Kristine rightly was shocked. He told her from the off that he was single, not that he was newly married, and he tried to explain things. His family was actually immigrants from Guyana, and they were very conservative. They were very religious. They were very set in their ways on their views and how their reputation and like not bringing shame on the family and things obviously was a big integral part of their beliefs. And him having a child from an affair, he was a married man, and that would bring shame on the family, and it would sort of impact his family's reputation. And he was married to a woman of similar religion that his family had actually deemed an acceptable partner. I don't know if it's arranged marriage or anything like that, but it's seemingly along those lines. They said that she was the perfect partner, and now he's gone out and he's had an affair and he's got this woman pregnant, and now they're having a baby out of wedlock when he's already married. He told her that his wife and his parents and himself all lived under the same roof, and that if they found out about this, his life would be completely over. They would stop paying his dental tuition so that he could obviously become the dentist, and it would just ruin his entire life. Well, Rudy, guess what? Maybe you should have thought about that before you cheated on your wife, before you got poor Kristine pregnant. Maybe you should have thought about all that before. Anyway, because of this, he was adamant that she got rid of this baby. In the months that followed, there were so many arguments, and they were all revolving around, obviously, this child that she had growing inside of her, their child. He really didn't want it because of all the issues it would cause him, but she did. This was her baby and she wanted to keep it. She told him pretty much that she was keeping it whether he liked it or not. She didn't want him involved whatsoever. Like, if he didn't want to be involved in the kid's life, she wasn't bothered. Like, he didn't have to be involved. She wasn't gonna make him do anything that he didn't want to do, but she wasn't getting rid of her baby. And on the other hand, he just wanted her to end the pregnancy because it would cause him too much hassle, even though he's dug himself into this hole. His easy way out was to abort this baby. But obviously Kristine was this baby's mother and she didn't want to. According to her sister and her friends, Kristine actually became really jumpy and worried and nervous. And that wasn't like her at all. She was very paranoid and scared, and she was always this independent, free spirit. And she'd completely done a U-turn from being this young, fierce woman into a paranoid, worried mess. She obviously was worried about Rudy. She would even tell her friends and her family things like she was worried that Rudy would go as far as punching her in the stomach, or even worse, to get what he wanted. His main focus was to get rid of this baby. So if he needed to, I don't know, cause an impact to her stomach to make her have a miscarriage or something like that, she believed that he would. And that's really scary because obviously she's worried about him. She's thinking that he's capable of doing these kinds of things to her. Otherwise, why would she say him? She was never a worried person. She was never feared. And suddenly she's petrified of what he might do to her and her baby. And that's just awful. He never fully threatened her from what I could gather, but she also never really felt safe around him. Over time, they began sort of getting less and less contact with each other. She was scared, I don't blame her. I'd stay away from him too. If they had to meet, she would make sure that it was in a public place. Again, she was scared of what he might do to her. That's literally all this case points to, is her fear of him. Why would you make sure it's in a public place if you trusted him and didn't think he'd do anything to you? There'd be no need. Kristine had come to terms with the fact that she didn't want Rudy in her life. She didn't want him in her baby's life. She had one main goal with him, and that was that she wanted his name on the birth certificate. Maybe that would enable her to possibly seek child support in the future, although I don't believe that she was interested in his money at the time at all. It was because she just wanted her baby to know who the father was. She wanted his name on the certificate. He was the dad, and so why shouldn't his name be on there? Rudy began avoiding her. She kept calling his bleeper repeatedly, and he just didn't answer. And all she wanted, literally all she wanted, was his name on the certificate. She wanted him to agree to that, and he just sort of never answered the phone to her or the bleeper. She was hoping that she could change his mind, and then one day she got an answer, but it wasn't Rudy. It was his wife, Rochelle. She was wondering why this person was continuously contacting her husband on the bleeper, ringing all the time, and who was she? At first, she said that she was one of his students, but quickly admitted that actually they'd had a relationship, it didn't last very long, and that it was over now. She told them that she had a really good reason for all the calls. She wanted to ask him one thing, and obviously Rochelle wanted to know what that reason was, but she said, you want to know the reason, go and ask Rudy. Rudy will tell you. Get him to tell you. Obviously, it's not my place to tell you, it's his. So that's what she said to her. She called Kristine a few times back, basically saying that Rudy wouldn't tell her anything. She was getting nothing from him. And then she just came out with it, are you pregnant? And Kristine told the truth. And why shouldn't she? She was pregnant by Rudy. And Rudy, she gave him the chance to tell his wife, because his wife was suspicious. She knew something was going on. He literally had the chance to tell her himself, but he wouldn't. And so when the question was put to her, yeah, she told the truth. She said that she didn't want to interfere with the marriage at all. She just wanted his name on the birth certificate, and then she'd be on her way. She was really looking forward to being a single mother, and she didn't want him to have anything to do with him, not romantically, anything like that. If he wanted to be a father to their child, she probably would have let him. But apart from that, that was where it ended. That was all she wanted of him. Obviously, Rochelle was heartbroken, and she directed that at Rudy. She was really angry. They'd not been married that long, and then he's having an affair and getting her pregnant, and it's just, she was really, really mad, like she would be. It got to the end of summer, and she pretty much had no contact with any of them. In October of 1998, she was 5 months pregnant, and she was 2 months away from graduation. She was really looking forward to being a mother. She had read all the books that she could read. She chose a place that she was going to give birth. She had saved up $7,000 in her bank account, preparing for obviously anything she needed or any emergencies. She was prepared to go it alone, and she was okay with that. She planned everything meticulously. She planned all her sort of baby visits with a midwife and everything like that. She had it all planned out, and she was ready. She was ready for graduation, and she was ready for her baby to arrive. Then, at the beginning of October, Rudy resurfaces. He calls her saying that his wife has kicked him out and that he's staying with his cousin. His behaviour was very strange, so all of a sudden he took a sort of interest in their child together, which, bearing in mind, he didn't want anything to do with. He didn't want the child. He wanted the child aborted, and he didn't want the pregnancy to carry on. Now, okay, I get it. People can change their minds. They can. You might have thought about it with his wife kicking him out, and he might have sort of come to terms with it and been okay with it. He even went as far as to offer to be her birthing coach and even suggested some Hindu names. So it seemed like he was taking a serious interest in their child. And Kristine was wary of it, and I can't blame her. That was a sudden U-turn for him. He was so determined to not have this child. He would do everything he could to try and get her to get rid of it, and now all of a sudden he's here, he wants to be a dad, he's suggesting names, and he suddenly changed his mind about being a father. You would find it odd, especially to the point where she was frightened of him, frightened of meeting him in public, in anywhere that wasn't public, frightened of what he may do to her. So yeah, you would be wary and you would be thinking it was strange. She made it clear that she didn't want a romantic relationship with him, and she actually encouraged him to try and sort it out with his wife, to try and get back with her. On the 21st of October, Rudy called her and asked her to meet with him. He apparently got this apartment in Queens, and he wanted her to see it. He wanted her to help tidy it up, to help move in, things like that, and she agreed. On Saturday, the 24th of October, Rudy came to her apartment, but she wasn't actually ready yet. Her roommate buzzed him upstairs and obviously said that she's not ready, you'll have to wait. He was apparently very antsy, very agitated. He was very distressed and acting so strange, pacing around, and she was just taking her time, getting ready. Didn't really care that he was anxious to leave. She just took her time, and I don't blame her for that. I would too, after all he put her through. She made him wait. She rang her sister, and her sister didn't answer, so she left a voicemail saying that she was going to go to this apartment with Rudy to check it out with him, he'd asked her to, and that she would ring her back later on in the day and try and catch her then. When Kristine was finally ready to leave, away they drove together. She got in his car, Rudy got in his car, and that was the last anyone had ever seen or heard from Kristine again. Kathy obviously got worried when she didn't get a call from Kristine. It wasn't like her at all. If she said was going to do something, she did it. So yeah, okay, she might have got distracted or something like that, but it was just abnormal for her. If she said she was going to call, she would have called, and she didn't. Then on the 25th, her roommate had become worried because she didn't return home that night. She'd never come home the night before after she left with Rudy, and not making it home was completely out of character for her again. So they called Kathy. They called her sister. They explained that she'd not come home that night, and they were both worried. They knew something was wrong. Obviously, she didn't receive the phone call from her like she was expecting, and now she'd not turned up home. Something wasn't right. Kathy and her husband Kevin went to the police station together to report her as missing. As you know, with missing people, it's got to be so long of them being missing before they can actually file a report, which is what they said to them. It's not been long enough. You can't file it yet. Maybe she was on vacation. Maybe she left. All these things that they say. The police did call her back, however, 2 days later to take an information account, but they were still not looking at her case as her being missing. And they were angry and frustrated, rightly so, because she was missing. She was pregnant and she was missing, and the police seemingly just weren't taking it seriously. So they went to Rudy. That was the last person that she was seen with, or known to be with at least. Her voicemail, Kathy's voicemail, was said that she was going to an apartment with Rudy, and so they tried to track him down to obviously speak to him. They found an approximate address of him, and they went to his neighbourhood. They were kind of looking around. They came across his mother and his cousin, and they sort of said to them that they wanted them to get Rudy to speak to him. When he did finally come home and show up, he had police backup. So obviously someone had tipped him off. One of his family members had said that they were there waiting for him, and so he brought the police back up with him too. They waited outside his house, but before he actually got a chance to go in, they sort of bombarded him with questions. Where was she? When was the last time that he saw her? He said that he picked her up and he took her to a shopping centre. When he asked which shopping centre, he of course couldn't remember. He said that he stayed in the car the entire time, which of course was very different to the voicemail she'd left. She said she was going to an apartment with Rudy, not a shopping centre. So that didn't match at all. He claimed that after she had done her shopping, he dropped her off at around 3 till 4 p.m. in Brooklyn, just a few blocks away from her apartment. And that was so she could stop at this health and beauty store. And then that was it. That was the last time he saw her. And that was all he said. He then went in his house. A full week after she had actually gone missing, the police finally began to look into it. The news spread and public awareness sort of got raised, and 2 people actually came forward to saying that they'd seen her later on that day. The first was an employee at the health food store saying that she had actually come in the store. The second was a laundromat, and they said that they'd seen her sort of walk past the window of the building. Both later recounted these statements. The laundromat basically got the days mixed up and did see her, but not on that day. And the shop saw someone that looked really similar to her, but it wasn't actually her. And it was found out that it wasn't her by saying that she owned a pair of peach pink pants. Now, anyone that knew Kristine, as I told you guys, she always wore black. She literally didn't own a pair of pink pants. It's not her style. It's not something she would own. It's not something she would ever wear. And so they knew it wasn't her. And again, she was last seen wearing all black. So unless she just randomly got these pants from God knows where and put them on halfway through the day, it wasn't her. Weeks and weeks passed and there was still no sign of Kristine. On the 10th of November, the family held vigil outside of the college holding signs for her safe return. She was literally 2 months away from finishing her dream. You guys know, as I've told you before, she was so focused on what she wanted. She had her child on the way that she was so excited for. She was so excited to become mother. And there was just no way she'd have left all that behind. There was just no way. Okay, a pregnancy wasn't planned, but she was excited. She wanted the baby. She'd obviously planned everything out, and to just walk away from it all just wasn't her. As the months passed, she missed her prenatal appointments, which she had, as again, meticulously planned. She just missed them all. Everything she'd put into place, everything she had lined out one after the other, she just didn't attend them all, and it wasn't like her at all. On the 2nd of November, Rudy was questioned with his lawyer present. He was said to be cooperative, and he didn't have a solid alibi, but there was no evidence of his involvement. Yes, he had a motive, but they just didn't have anything on him. The police actually said that just because he was said to be the last person seen with her, that's not a crime. And they needed evidence of foul play, which, yeah, okay, it's not a crime to be the last person seen with her. But normally, if someone's gone missing and nobody else has seen them and they're never seen again, that last person is usually the main suspect in the case. Normally. She had this baby coming along, which would have ruined Rudy's life. And he knew it. He told her that. So essentially, in his eyes, I'm not saying that it's true because it's not, but she ruined his perfect life. And he had no alibi. So, wow. The thing that's really bad is, like, if he did something to Kristine and he is the reason that she's missing, or even did something terrible to her and maybe took her life, if there's no evidence of it, then if he did do it, he just gets away with it until they find something, and it's just awful. So Rudy was never charged. He maintained his innocence completely, and police did believe it was a homicide, so they do believe that she's been murdered, but they have nothing. They have no evidence. They have nothing tying Rudy to it apart from he was the last one seen with her. They just have nothing. They also did look into other things, like, was it an accident? Was it this random act of violence that obviously led to her death and it was nothing to do with Rudy at all? They did ground searches, they did earth searches. They just found nothing though. Absolutely nothing. Kristine's family enlisted the help of Gil Alba, which is an ex-police detective, and he is now a private investigator. He, of course, did his own searches. He did localized searches in small areas and did many of them, and he also searched well-known dump sites, but there was just no sign of her. He didn't find anything either. As winter came around, the media stopped so much processing a story across and getting it out there. There was a $10,000 reward put up by the family, which really isn't very much for a woman missing in New York, and that's just really sad. The media dropped the case. There wasn't really a big reward out for a safe return, and just heartbreaking how cold the case can go and how quickly it can just drop off. 2 years passed by and the family managed to raise enough to get a billboard up. So they've got a billboard of Kristine missing, and they also managed to bump up the reward to $25,000. So Kristine Kupka has been classed as endangered and missing since October of 1998. She was 28 years old at the time of her going missing, and if she was still alive today, she would be 50. Kristine was last seen leaving her home in the 200th block of Westminster Avenue in Brooklyn, New York on the 24th of October in 1998. She was last seen around 12:30 p.m. She was wearing all black, with Rudy being the last person to be seen with her. Last known person to be seen with her. She was described as Caucasian with fair skin, freckles and blue eyes. She had red hair at the time, she has a small scar on her nose, and she was around about 5'8". If she carried her pregnancy to full term, her child would have been born sort of February, March time of 1999. If you have any information on Kristine whatsoever, please, I would urge you to contact the police. There's unfortunately been no updates on this case since 2010, when there was they thought that they had this big break in the case. There was this shop owned by a cousin of Rudy's, and they went and finally dug it up. So the family really tried at the time to press for this floor to be dug up, but his cousin never allowed it, and they had no sort of evidence, I guess, to make them get a warrant or anything like that, and so it was never actually dug up. But in 2010, they got new owners, and the new owners were approached and they allowed it to happen. They noticed inside that they had this concrete floor down that didn't really match anything, and so they got in this radar scanning equipment and they began to dig. They also said that they brought in cadaver dogs and they went to the same spot. Unfortunately, no remains were found under there. There were no signs of Kristine. They did find bone fragments, but it was quickly determined to be of an animal. And so that was it. Kristine has been missing for 22 years. Her mother has since passed away, not knowing whatever happened to her daughter. Her other family members obviously are a lot older now, but they are still seeking justice for Kristine. They do believe that she has been murdered, and that she was either murdered by Rudy or sort of by somebody else under his orders, and that he hired them to kill her. Rudy works as a dentist in Florida and still says that he's innocent. Personally, I do think that all roads point to Rudy, but there's no evidence against him. There's no It's all circumstantial and sort of word of mouth, like she was worried and stuff, she was scared of him, and then she suddenly goes missing. But there's no evidence against him, so nothing can be done at this moment in time. So this cold case remains unsolved. There've been no arrest, there's been no evidence, there's just nothing. Let me know what you guys actually think on this. Do you think that Rudy did it? Do you think he was involved in it whatsoever, or do you think it was a different theory, or maybe she's still out there somewhere, maybe she did just leave, which I do think is very unlikely, but it's still possible. I hope one day that we do find out for the family's sake. But yeah, that's the end of the case. If you guys have any more suggestions, let me know and I'll look into them for you. Give me a big thumbs up on the video and subscribe if you've enjoyed it. I like similar content videos. Anyway guys, that's all I have today on the case of Kristine Kupka. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye!